The passage of time. We have shared your joy at the birth of your children, and proudly we have watched them grow. We've taken care of your healthcare needs during the good times and the not so good. Your parents and grandparents have depended upon us. Together we have shared the struggles and the wonders of life. At Oktibbeha County Hospital, we are celebrating 30 years of being your lifelong choice in healthcare.
Item on the agenda is the approval of the official agenda.
Mr. Mayor and Board, a few items for your consideration for placement upon the consent agenda. On page 3, items F and G under board business. The 3 items under the airport departmental business, Roman numeral 10. Item 3 at the bottom of page 3, the building and codes department. Item C, the office of the city clerk, numbers 2 and 3. D, the electric department, items 1 and 2. The fire department, all 4 items. F, personnel, the 2 items. Police department, G, all 7 items on pages 5 and 6. H, under public services, items 3 through 9. And those items I'd recommend for your consideration for placement on consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, before we entertain a motion, I'd like to be recorded as voting nay. Don't need an explanation on item personnel F2 and H, public services 9. I don't need an explanation. I've done my research on it. I want to be recorded as voting nay, but we take off consent agenda for those purposes. Take item 9 off under public services and 2 under personnel.
9 on public services and
2 on personnel.
2 under personnel.
Yes, sir.
All right. Does anyone else have any additions or deletions to the consent agenda?
If not, do we have a motion to accept these items for the official agenda?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The next item is approval of the minutes of the recess meeting of December the 18th.
There's corrections on the desk, and with those corrections, I'd move approval of the minutes of the recess meeting December 18, 2007.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion is second. All those in favor of approving the minutes of December the 18th, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Comments by the mayor and the Board of Aldermen. We'd like to welcome you tonight and look forward to you participating with us. And you have been participating with us in the past in here and representing the airport board, and I think you kind of know how things happen around here or whatever. We'd like to say that we have a graduate class of about 30. Y'all, you graduate students, hold your hands up. Let's see. Woo. Okay. They're here. I think they're part of your group. Is that right? Public administration, policy administration, graduate course. And we appreciate, we welcome you, not just this time, but any other time you feel free to come. This past week, we had a very nice ceremony for our police department in which they achieved something that we have not had before in the state of Mississippi, in which they were the first group to go through all of the items to be an accredited police department in the state of Mississippi with a certain degree of criteria and hoops to have to jump through. And David, we appreciate y'all's efforts, and we appreciate the achievement that y'all have accomplished. The first group in the state of Mississippi to do that. Any alderman would like to say something?
The gentleman from Fourth recognized first, I'm sorry.
Sure, I was just going to explain to the people that were here that y'all may have read in the paper that I had requested some discussion, if possible, on the issue related to the Parks Commission tonight. And what I really wanted to do was to offer an opportunity for people to speak, for example, in our citizens' comments section, if they have anything they might like to say about this issue, because I know that there's been a lot of discussion about it already in the community. Although I personally haven't gotten any emails, I haven't gotten any calls from anyone related to this issue. So I really wanted to give people a chance, if they wanted to get some of this issue off their chest, to talk about it and to share with us their views. And if our CAO had any updates she wanted to provide for the public, or if any of the aldermen themselves wanted to speak on this issue, to do so. I don't believe there's any intent, I know there is none on my part, to make any motion or to take any action on this tonight. In fact, there hasn't even been a proposal made to me yet, but I would certainly welcome anyone's comments if they'd like to share them with us tonight.
And don't be surprised after 3 or 4 have spoken that I call that we move on to another direction.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Can I be recognized for some
Yes.
questions? Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to briefly say that we, the mayor and the board, have discussed periodically about a municipal justice complex, and the board has not taken any substantive action, in my opinion, on that matter. And I would like to propose that the board move forward at this meeting or at a future meeting in an expeditious manner to acquire land, eminent domain otherwise, for a municipal justice complex. So I just want to make those preliminary comments, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. It is now a segment that we allow citizen comments. If you'll please state your name and the ward that you live in.
Robert Leach, and I'm embarrassed to say I'm not sure. Am I in your ward now? I'm on South Jackson Street. PC, is that you?
Could be.
Terrible. I can't believe that was my first. Anyway, I'm on South Jackson Street, so that kind of narrows it. I've been, as you know, Starkvillian now for about 29 years. I've been heavily involved in youth sports, fitness opportunities. I count all y'all as among my friends, actually. Y'all have been very supportive of what we've been trying to do, including the mayor, and trying to get major tournaments and major things happening so that we could use the facilities we've created. I've been honored by literally hundreds of volunteers in the process of building the sportsplex and in the process of figuring out how we were going to get a referendum passed and figuring out what the legalities. We had accountants, we had attorneys, we had people that volunteered their time right and left. Right now, we have that same situation with the Parks Commission. We have volunteers that work for you and for us. If there are procedures that aren't being followed correctly, let's get some help. Let's figure out how to get the procedures done correctly and by the book. Whether it's a youth soccer organization or a school board, whatever group of volunteers it is. And so I just want to emphasize that if there's other things that are involved, for example, if it's the money that they're dealing with and now we'd like to see that used in other departments or in other areas, or, I don't know what other things might be behind the scenes. I can only guess because they haven't been made public. And I don't want to, make any false assumptions. I do want to state unequivocally that we would like a public debate on any of those types of issues, so that if it's really just a problem of grammar and notes not being signed, well, that's one thing. But if it's a process of, there's a lot of money in the parks budget, and maybe this could be better used on sewers or on streets or on building a convention center or whatever it is that someone has in mind, I think that needs to be a public debate, because there are a great many of us that still want to see all the parks improved, all the fitness opportunities, enhance in Starkville. And we felt like when we voted for that referendum, that's what we were voting for. And so that's the message. My letter in the editor today, I'm not going to repeat it to bore you, but thank you so much for your time and consideration.
Just to give you a quick answer on the monies, they can't be touched. Law says that all the monies that will continue to go, that's pretty well very clear.
My name's Scott Maynard. I'm former chairman of the Park Commission. I was the chairman when the Park Commission gained autonomy. The reason that we pursued that to begin with was because of the state law, and Mr. McLaurin helped guide us through that, and one of the people that had pointed that out to us originally. The Park Commission chose to do that because the board that sat at that time did not want to deal with the day-to-day operation of what was going on at the parks. They didn't want the midnight phone calls. They didn't want all the issues that came up. Even after we had autonomy, we, when I was chairman, presented quarterly reports to the Park Commission. I remember Alderman Perkins asking at one point, why are we having to go through all this? Y'all have autonomy. Do what you were designated to do by state law. I fully support the Park Commission remaining autonomous. I think that is the best way to go. I think that is the way that the state law reads very clearly. As I pointed out in my letter to the editor today, I think that the city of Starkville should provide learning opportunities and continuing education for every commission that this city has set up, every committee that this city has set up, so everyone understands exactly what is required and what is needed. That's a very simple one-day seminar at the beginning of one year. At some point in every year, you have a new seminar for all new members on all new commissions and committees. Very easy process. I think that's the way it should be. I went back and researched, and all through my time on the Park Commission, we did a lot of research. I went back and researched when the original 2% bond issue was passed to understand exactly what the purpose of that money was. And it was for new construction and renovation. If you go back and look 15 years back now in the newspapers, it states that in all the articles very clearly that 2% money should be used for new construction and renovation. The building that's being built right now, the new sports complex, was actually in the original plans and got cut because of money. So this is not something that was new or dreamed up. While I was chair of the Park Commission, we surveyed over 1,000 citizens and students to determine what they wanted from their parks. And those suggestions were clearly outlined to the Board of Aldermen and to this Board of Aldermen as I rolled off the commission, and they were numbered in priority order based on the surveys that were received back. So the commission understood, the Board of Aldermen understood exactly what the citizens wanted and the priority order in which they wanted it. So I fully, again, support the autonomy of the Park Commission, and unlike Mr. Corey, I received about 25 or 30 emails from people today that seemed to think my side was the one they preferred.
Good evening to the Mayor and Board, Alderman. My name is Alvin Turner, Ward 7. The citizens was kind of let down and heartbroken on the Martin Luther King celebration. When it came around to the city, we had no alderman, no one to represent. And they was kind of heartbroken about that. Thank you.
Good evening.
Hello, Ron.
My name is Ron Cosman. I'm representing Starkville in Motion, and I don't live within the city limits yet. I wanted to give you an update tonight on both the Lynn Lane and the Safe Routes to Schools education and outreach component. Bill Webb is on the agenda later on to talk about the actual infrastructure. Just wanted to let you know that we'll be bringing a detailed budget before the board shortly on the Lynn Lane Education and Safety Outreach. We have requested a ruling and clarification from the Federal Highway Administration and MDOT on how those monies can and cannot be spent. So we're waiting for clarification. Once we have that, you'll have all the information to move forward on that. As far as Safe Routes to Schools is concerned, we're working diligently on that budget. That has to go first before the school board, and then it will come before the Board of Aldermen, and that should be in the next month or so. So hopefully I'll be back here in 2 weeks.
Good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening
Good evening, Ms.
to the board and to our new elected official there. I'd like to say welcome. Say to my alderman, vice mayor, that's my alderman,
Good evening.
Mr. P.C. McLaurin, and also to Mac, the rest, myself, and Corey, also to you, Summer. I still would like to just call your name out, to say, and also you too, Mayor, because I could have been sitting in that chair. But I'd just like to say, I have been on the Park Commission, I think more than any park commission we have had. The reason I have been on there is because it's voluntary. You submit your application if you want to be on. So I had to submit my application. Each time I submitted mine, no one was there. Nobody else was there. They appointed me, to the board. The board appointed me. I would just like to say, things that we do out at Starkville Park and Recreation for the children, we do it for the children here in Octavia Hall County and also surrounding areas that come and enjoy our parks from Tupelo on up. We always get good letters about soccer. We get a good letter about basketball, baseball, whatever, until when we start the building up on baseball. I would just like to say, we have no problems, on the Park Commission. We do what we're told to do. We come here and we report annually to y'all, what we're to do. Last time we came, everybody said, well, why did y'all bring this up to us? Y'all had a, audacity to do what you need to do. Why don't you do it? So we started to do what we had to do. Park Commission is up and running. If you see, we're building. We're doing it, though, for the children. Again, I say, and we're doing volunteer work. If there's anyone in here that feel like we're not doing a good job, tell us. Just don't bring it on, the newspaper. Come down, visit. We have hours that we're in operation down at Park and Recreation. We'll even come for a special meeting or take you around the park. We have taken, all aldermen. We've taken citizens around the park. I would just like to say things that we do. Please let us do it, as a committee. Let us do it as the park commissioners. Commission us to do that because we are two voting citizens here in Octavia Hall County. We love our city. We love our children most of all. That's what I like to say. Please don't have no political sit back on who may sit on the board or what they're not doing or we're going to get back. We don't need that. This is a city. We need to move forward with what we do instead of going 10 days back. We need to move forward here in the city. So I'm asking you, if there's any operations, get someone to come down. Show us what we're doing wrong. We haven't received anything that said we were doing something wrong. We hadn't received that. If we're doing something wrong, let us know. You had a capacity here to do it. So I'm asking you tonight to hear for the children. The children may not be here, but parents of the children are here. I'm asking you this, please let us do our job. Thank you.
I'm going to allow one more person to speak in regard to the Parks and Rec. Is there anyone else that'd like to speak in regard to that? Any other person would like to have a citizen's comment this time? We'll move on. We have a presentation with Judge Ishii over here. Annual report to the board.
Thank you for the opportunity to be with you tonight. The purpose of our appearance is to present the annual report of the Starkville Municipal Court to you. You should have in your packet 2 pages of information with summarized statistics of the court. Does everyone have a copy of that? These figures go back several years and show us where we have been, where we are today, and what direction we're probably going in the city. Let's look at some of these statistics very briefly. The total number of traffic citations increased in 2007, 1,772 to 11,328 compared to 9,556 in 2006. The number of DUIs in this jurisdiction rose dramatically. In 2006, we had 343 DUI cases in municipal court. Those cases increased to 424 in 2007, up 81 cases for an increase of 24%. The misdemeanor category had the largest increase of 35% from 2006 to 2007, with an increase of 460 cases. Felonies were about the same, up 8%. The total number of new cases for 2007 was 13,333 cases, up 2,251 cases from 2006, and the figures there were 11,082. So every category has shown an increase with an overall increase of 20%, 2007. On page 2 of your report, you will also see a significant increase in court collections, 11%, largely attributed to the increase in court personnel and the 2 court bailiffs that you approved 2 years ago. Despite our lack of working space, and all of you are well aware of our situation here, and Mr. Perkins, I applaud your comments earlier, sir, regarding the Justice Complex.
Thank you, Judge.
All of you are aware and have been aware of our situation here for a number of years. And so I'm not going to be going into that tonight because we're all on the same page there. But in spite of this lack of space, I think we're doing well in municipal court. It's functioning well. Your approval of the new court software was very timely and has been implemented. At this time, I'll call on Mr. Rook to give you a short report on the implementation of the software.
Thank you, sir. First of all, we want to thank you for allowing the city to purchase this software. It was a very important purchase. Installation and training were conducted last week by Tyler Technologies out of Tyler, Texas. And in fact, we went live yesterday. Now, obviously, a learning curve will be involved with this new software, and we feel that it will take several months to master the new system. However, our initial impressions are extremely positive. We feel that the efficiency and performance will be increased with this software, especially when the police department goes live with their system. So once again, I just want to say, and the court wants to say thank you for allowing this purchase.
Further, I am pleased to report that the court personnel are diligent in their duties in serving the city of Starkville and the citizenry of our city. The municipal prosecutor, Mr. Roy Carpenter, is representing the city well in municipal court. The court continues to enjoy a good working relationship with the various law enforcement agencies. Our thanks go to Chief David Lindley. Is Chief Lindley here tonight? Chief Lindley. As well as Assistant Chief John Outlaw. I don't know if he's here tonight. as well as Sheriff Dolph Bryan for their excellent cooperation with the court. Lastly, I want to thank you for your support of the municipal court. And I would ask at this time, if any of you have any questions, we'd be glad to address them for you.
Any board members got questions? Thank you, Judge.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on our list of presentations is MSU budget, their 2% fund expenditures. How y'all doing tonight?
Good, thank you. My name is Bill Kibler. I have the privilege of serving as the Vice President for Student Affairs at Mississippi State. Bill Broyles is our Assistant Vice President, and Jeremy Johnson, who's our Student Body President. I think you have a couple of handouts that we sent to you about the distribution of the 2% food and beverage sales tax allocation. This framework, well, actually, the allocation of the funding had already been determined before I came to work at Mississippi State, but I inherited the responsibility of working with the students on the implementation of this and the allocation. So what you see before you is a 3-year display of the 3 years that the students have had the opportunity to work with that money. I would just wanted to comment overall sort of about our approach, and then do that very quickly, and then you can certainly ask questions if you want. Our approach from the beginning has been to primarily do two things: to use this funding to support the efforts of our students, especially in the area of programming on the campus and the kind of programming that enables them to collaborate with the community, while also having a high priority toward focusing the use of that funding on programming that will bring either additional people to the Starkville community or encourage our students to come into the Starkville community. The idea that this becomes then somewhat self-perpetuating, that we are very appreciative of the allocation of the 2% food and beverage tax, but we use it in a way that hopefully will encourage more food and beverage business in the community. So the whole thing becomes self-perpetuating in terms of that interest. So you can see on the, in case you don't know what all that is, student associations are student government, which really serves two main thrusts on the campus. Not only are they a student governance group, but they do a lot of programming for students and out in the community. You're all familiar with Bulldog Bash and the Old Main Music Festival, which was called Spring Fever, but going back to Old Main Music Festival this next year, which is two big program thrust of the Student Association, which not only serves our students but brings a lot of visitors to the community. The Campus Activities Board and Music Maker Productions are the two largest programming bodies of our students, with Music Makers primarily being the body that's been most beneficial, has been the primary beneficiary of this, to put enough money in their coffers to be able to go out and attract the kind of entertainment to come to this community and for our students that brings people not only to this community from the local community but from throughout the state. The Student Association had a banner year last year and some entertainment that they offered that attracted people from well outside the city of Starkville to come to our campus and enjoy that. I think you all know what Bulldog Bash is, and the night route, which tries to encourage students to have an opportunity to come into the community by providing transportation. The other items that are on there, you know about the community transportation, which is now no longer in existence, and so that funding was allocated to the new Culver Student Union, but specifically allocated to the Culver Student Union to the programming entities within the union. So that will help the union continue to offer more programs that they would have that would attract others as well. And the Holmes Cultural Diversity Center also allocated into their programming budget in the efforts that they do as we have, like coming up right now, February is Black History Month, and they do an extensive amount of programming during Black History Month, speakers and other kinds of activities that not only bring citizens of Starkville onto our campus to enjoy some of that, but even so you can see how those allocations have gone during those years, and that's sort of the general thrust that we've had in how we use that money in order to try to be not only good stewards of the money, but in keeping with the spirit of why that money was provided to begin with. Anything you want to add, Jeremy, from a student perspective?
Well, the 2% money has been very beneficial to the students, and we've certainly taken it and we're using it to the best of our abilities to provide those amenities for the students to get out to the community and vice versa. So, like Dr. Kibler said, this is where it's going, and we just hope that you all see how beneficial it is for the students, in retrospect also to the community of Starkville.
We're open for questions.
Any aldermen have questions?
Dr. Kibler, can you talk a little bit about the future of the night route? The funding level is certainly level during this 3-year time period, and I expect costs have increased during that same time period. Is that something that you see long-term future benefits for and therefore needing additional funding?
Well, it may need some additional funding. We've, as you can see from the funding coming in, we've been fairly aggressive about trying to stay right at the ceiling of what we're allocated. The reason for the small reserve you see is to try to anticipate whether or not there may be some difference in what we've budgeted and what actually comes in, because we allocate that to the students in advance of the money coming in, so they could get about this business before they started. Yeah, there could be, as the funding increases, the opportunity for the night route to be increased in the funding. The concept from the beginning of the night route was never to be fully funded by the 2% tax money, but to be partially. The original goal was half or so of the money would be provided by 2% money, and the other half would come from various establishments in the community that would be anxious to have stops of the night route, stop at or near their location. We've had mixed results, I guess is the best way to put it. The students have in getting support of establishments in the community contributing to that. The cost to actually operate the night route in the schedule that the students want right now is about $29,000. So more than half of it is already being funded by the 2% tax. We've not been successful at raising the remainder of that yet. They've raised some money. We're doing our best to look at the schedule, curtail that some. Students are continuing to work on fundraising to do that. To fund all of it, in terms of what the students want from the 2% tax, would be problematic, because that means we would take away from some of the other areas that we think are important. Could we fund some more? Probably so, as revenue increases. We're committed to it. We've kept the same amount of funding each year and have worked with the students on any support we could provide as they go out and attempt to raise money. And it's very important to students. I think nearly every student that's running for student body president elections right now has the night route in their platform somewhere. So clearly this is a high priority for students, and we recognize that, to keep that going.
Cox, I was going to mention the total budget this year is $29,000 to run the night route, but that was increased during the year because we added a second bus during the spring semester, which has been wildly popular, as you've heard. So going into next year, clearly we're going to have to look at that. The cost for the spring semester this year is much higher than it was in the fall semester, not because of gas prices, but because of the additional services that we deliver. Thank you.
Any other aldermen? I have a question.
Yes, sir.
I see that you have a reserve for tax shortfall, which tells me that you've put aside monies for not collecting enough taxes to fund your program. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And that the history of the 2% has been that it's up around $10,000 more a year than each year in the past. And if that's the case, what happens to that $10,000 that you've got allocated for the shortfalls? if we haven't had a tax shortfall, but an actual tax increase.
Well, there's two things going on here, Mayor. One, your tax year, your fiscal year is different than ours. So the first year, we estimated there'd be about $200,000 in collections, but we had no idea. That was a wild guess, honestly, of what we thought it would be. We went into that, but we allocate the money, as Dr. Kibler said, in August, even though we, I believe, didn't start getting the money until your fiscal year, which is
October.
So we have a 3-month delay between when the city remits it to us compared to our fiscal year. But you are right, the sales tax collections are increasing. That's why we increased our budget the first year from $200,000 to $225,000 the second year. And we'll probably again escalate that up as the 2% collections contingent increase. It's not our intention to hold anything in the reserve, but since we're a cash basis kind of place out there, we want to make sure that we allocate only enough to the student organizations and the other users that we have enough cash from cash collections to cover.
I understand that, but still, if you carry your monies forwards, doesn't matter if you get it over here and you're gonna be carrying it forward, you're carrying a $10,000 reserve for shortfalls, which you're actually getting another $10,000 more a year than what you were expected to get. That money's gotta go somewhere.
Well, where some of that money goes is based on allocation of one-time funds to student organizations that come to my office. They tend to line up in the spring semester asking for anywhere from $500 to $5,000 to support various kinds of programs. This is a source of money where we're able to tell by this time of the year that we're going to have some funding in there to do that. I've got 2 fairly new organizations, for instance, both of which have come to me for fairly large programs they're doing on the campus this year, which will be cultural programs, maybe attractive to community members, where they've needed, because they don't have a significant funding base, they've needed some one-time money to support those programs, and that tends to be where this comes from, because that's not budgeted. Where I'm
I understand, but it doesn't show that on here that you're doing that.
No, because we can't budget, we haven't been able to budget it at the beginning of the year because not confident that we will actually have that.
So if you're putting aside $10,000 in reserve, and we're picking up another $10,000 in growth, so you essentially have $20,000 more than what you're showing here for those types of things.
Well, we were short $18,000, well, excuse me, we budgeted $200,000 the first year, held back $20,000 that we didn't allocate. So that meant we sent out $180,000 to all the organizations for their use. We took in $173,000 cash collections, so we allocated $180,000.
According to your budget year, you took in that, right?
Well, yes, sir, that's right.
Not according to what our budget year is.
Well, that's correct, but our budget year ends, the first year, our budget year was 9 months long, based on your year. Your year ended
We only had 9 months
September.
of collection
Right.
in the first year that we allocated this
That's
money.
correct.
I understand that. It's just like what I said, though, you eventually get on a line to where you're catching monies every month.
That's why you see when
in
we
regard to that.
we
That's
increased
why
the
we
budget
increased
the second year to 225 because of the estimate that the collections would go up, and we decreased the reserve to 10,000.
I see that.
We would
But
expect
then
that
we
as
expanded the increase by another 10,000 that you didn't expect. That thus gives you 20,000. So you've got essentially 20,000 that are going to these other organizations and not showing on your report here.
No, sir, we haven't allocated all of that. Remember, we're spending the amount of allocations less what we held back. We estimated it was 225. We didn't allocate 225, we allocated 215. So there's no pot of money out there that we haven't allocated.
He just said that he gave it to other organizations that
We do.
lined up in there to come in there to get monies.
That's correct, we do some, but not 10,000 each
Oh,
year.
no.
It's $500 or 1,000, things like that.
Any other members got any questions?
Mr. Mayor and Board, the local and private legislation establishing and dividing the 2% money specifies that the city reserves the right to approve or disapprove budgets and recall and ask for detailed reports and so forth. In light of the presentation tonight, I would move that the board approve the fiscal year 2008 budget in the general categories that are specified in the report, and that at the end of that year, the university again return with perhaps a more detailed expenditure report on the money.
That's actually moving item A under the mayor's business up to this particular point here, I think.
That is correct, Mayor.
And we have a second to that. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Stan, I believe you're listed next.
Thank you, Mayor, Board of Aldermen. I'm Stan Sheridan. I operate, I guess, the one and only recycling facility we have here in Starkville, named Starkville Recycling. Everything's going real well with the recycling. Each year we see a real large growth in support from our citizens and the involvement that you have probably trying to promote this stuff for us. We have neighborhoods and churches and different organizations that have different events to try to raise recycling, and it's working out real well for us. The 4 city drop-off sites are having to be serviced now 3 times a week rather than 1 time when we originally took it over. And that just shows you that Starkville works and that recycling works in Starkville. What I come before you is 2 things. The first one is I'd like to see what the chance would be for us to come up with a new recycling team or a committee that's from the citizens. I know we have a recycling team at this time that it's called the Trash Committee. And I think that we need to have something, and this is not just on my thoughts, but also talking with John David Burns through DEQ. We called him and asked him what he thought would be the ideal way to try to get more involvement in the city and see what's going on, how we can improve it. We have a lot of people that come out to see us, and they want me to come out and pick up this or go somewhere and we do all we can as a public service. There's just so much that we can do. We don't know the areas of town that need improvement. Well, we know areas, but we don't have a way to come before you to get it done. I'm a private recycler, but I'm trying to do all I can as a public service as well. And that's where I feel like we need a team that can go out and maybe meet once a month, come to y'all and say, this area of town needs more involvement from you by this way. And then you can approve it or disapprove it. By me coming to you, it's sort of like me coming before the board and saying you need to buy tires from me. You need somebody from the city, I feel like, to come before you, the citizens that are involved in this. If we could get somebody that, say, a 3-person panel that could have school involvement, neighborhood involvement, even business involvement, to come up so everybody would have an area that would have an expertise in this recycling. It could help us a whole lot. That's just like we have a recycling trailer that we had a grant approved back in, 9/19 of 06. And we just got that trailer in before Christmas, and it's still sitting out there. And we haven't been designated any areas to put it at. It's a $15,000 grant, I believe it was approved. Y'all approved it. It's been taken care of. The grant was only executed days before it was to expire. Also, y'all approved your drop-off sites of being painted and fixed up. And these are things that y'all have approved but have never been really executed out. And it's not really for me to come up and complain or do that, but I think a committee could sort of have a watchful eye over what's going on and have a better input for y'all and the citizens as well. I just feel like, and like I said, talking with DEQ, that would be the honorable way to go about it.
Stan, I think that would be an excellent idea. the trash committee you mentioned previously, its primary objective, and when you look at some of the major actions we've implemented in the community, the smoking ordinance, for example, that was done in part through a committee to help facilitate how you go about doing that. And I would certainly be willing to motion approval of that. You were a little vague as far as the actual formation of the committee. Most of our committees consist of 1 to 3 aldermen and then people from the community. You mentioned 3 members. What would you say to, say, a 5-member committee with 2 aldermen, yourself, and 2 people from the community, so you kind of have an even mix of people
Right.
in there?
Where it come from, the citizen involvement, was through my discussions with DEQ, John David Burns. He thought that it would be more involved to have citizens. Now, of course, like you say, and put the alderman in there as well would be great. I think it would be great. But just knowing how busy and what all y'all have going on, I mean, how many committees can y'all chair right there? And that was the reason for the citizen involvement. But that would be great.
Well, then, going along that lines, of course, I'll let any other aldermen, if they want to speak, do so. But afterwards, I would like to move approval of at least a 5-member committee and then have advertised for letters of interest to be brought back at the next meeting. And I'll proceed to do that in a motion. But I'm sorry, Mr. Perkins, did you need to say something?
Mr. Mayor, may I speak? Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor, certainly, I'm sure the gentleman's thoughts and intentions are well. Just want to add a little food to this, is that we already have an established recycling, rubbish, and trash committee that consists of 2 active aldermen, 1 vacant position, and it would seem to me that this is a matter that could be assigned to that particular committee if this board so chooses. But I think it's very imperative that we receive input on this particular matter in the committee process, perhaps from the day-to-day chief executive officer, the mayor, the CEO, Ms. Spruill, and Ms. Sharon Boyd, our sanitation director. So that would be my personal preference as to how I think that this process could best work, as opposed to our just sitting here tonight naming what aldermen, what members, letters of interest, in all great respect to all of the contributors to any comments made. But we do have an established committee, the gentleman from 1 and 3 on the committee, a vacancy due to the resignation of the former gentleman from 2. And then this matter went to the committee process, and they can bring their recommendation back to the board. And this committee decides and elects to get input from the mayor, Ms. Spruill, and Ms. Boyd. I think that we will have received some very substantive input, and therefore we can reach the most informed decision. So, but if it's the will of the board, this is nothing I'm fervently against. I'm not going to utilize any energies to oppose it tonight, but I think that's how it would best work. So I'm going to make those comments, and I'm going to now defer to whatever the board wants. So I'm not going to just readily oppose the motion, but that was just my comments as to how I think this should be best facilitated. So if majority of the board wants to move with that motion, then I'm going to support it. So I just wanted to offer those comments, Mr. Mayor.
Well, Mr. Perkins, on July the 18th of 2006 is when y'all dedicated this trash committee. And according to your minutes and what meetings I've been to, y'all had three times they have met out here and talked about things of recycling. So that's the reason we was hoping to try to get something that could come in to have more involvement for the citizens.
Mr. Sheridan, unfortunately, that was part of the reason why I was wanting to suggest starting with the clean slate on this.
Right,
Because
that's me too.
it seems like that would probably be the best way to go about it, and it would give people from the community that are interested in this specific issue, not just dealing with sanitation ordinances, but this specific issue, the chance to submit a letter of interest and be involved in that. So members of the board are certainly willing to vote against it if they would choose to, but I would be willing to make a motion that the Board of Aldermen officially form a recycling committee consisting of 5 members, 2 aldermen, Mr. Sheridan, and 2 members from the community to be selected at the next Board of Aldermen meeting based upon receipt of letters of interest.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion?
And that includes, Alderman Corr, does it not, an advertisement in the newspaper seeking indications of interest? We have a number of citizens in town interested in recycling that would probably like to participate.
Correct, and let me allow my motion to amend to include that.
All of you have heard the motion. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Thank you.
I have one other thing I'd like to add if I could. As you know, in the past history, recycling has started. Our break-even point runs a very fine line, and I've never come before you and asked you for any kind of money, and I don't intend to now. What I would like to ask is that your surplus front-load bins, we're in bad need of more bins. I mean, it just from the businesses, taking around different businesses, picking up the cardboard. We can't afford to buy the new bins, and I'd like to ask that any surplus front-load bins you have, it'd be some way that I could purchase them, lease them, just for the purpose of recycling in Starkville.
Ms. Boyd, would you be willing to speak to Mr. Sheridan at some point after this meeting concerning that issue?
If he would contact me, I should definitely would.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Richard, you and Clyde are on next.
Well, Clyde's not here tonight, and as you well know, nobody speaks for Clyde, and I'm not going to try.
How are you?
Good, thank you. Mr. Lincoln, welcome to this august body. And I see that you saved the city $10,000 by not having no opposition.
Well, it was some dollar amount, yes.
You remember last year I gave you a budget for $13,000 to $14,000 to have the sidewalks cleaned up for the entire summer. It's $10,000. You give them another 4, you can get that. That right there will do it. Okay. I will say that most of the comments I have tonight are very positive. I know that'll surprise most of you. It won't disappoint you, I hope, but it will surprise you. I think last May we made the recommendation that you look at a hearing officer, and I'm gratified tonight to see that's on the agenda. And we hope that you take this under advice, not under advice, we hope you implement it. I think now that you've seen what happens, that it occupies a lot of your time at the Board of Aldermen meeting, you could be doing something constructive other than hearing various complaints, I guess, by the code compliance officer and what's going on there. Now, along those same lines, the code compliance officer, I see in the paper today and also hear that you're considering hiring a part-time code compliance officer to deal with weekend problems. I commend you for that. Y'all are getting serious about this. And for the first time, I've been here 37 years, that's the first time any Board of Aldermen ever been serious about. Having said that, I drove by Caldwell Street today, and I know this has been addressed several times, and every one of y'all here a few weeks ago, on 2 different occasions, if you were paying attention, you heard Mr. Lyles say that he has talked to people as much as 5 and 6 times. Now, I don't quite understand that. Instead of talking to 5 people one time, one person 5 times, why not talk to 5 people one time? And my goodness, there's no reason that you can't implement these programs without having to go back and back and back and say, do this. Now, I see that in the paper today that they Ben Griffith indicated they had identified 17 wooden corrals and had them eliminated, and that's good. But now on North Montgomery, on Montgomery Street, where they had corrals, the reason they put the corrals there to start with is to hold the garbage. So what happened, they moved the corral, now the garbage is going back there. Now these people have been talked to. How many times have got to be talked to? Now, another thing that I look at is University Drive. Now, Clyde, the last time we were here, he made the comment how much better it's looking. Well, I think it's digressed since then. And if we could just get the garbage cans off the street, that would go a long way in making this more attractive. Mississippi State should be proud of University Drive. And that's in your ward, and there's nothing to be proud of. It needs to be cleaned up, and it goes back to the owners. You can't tell the kids don't do this, because they don't care. A lot of them don't. But on the other hand, somebody owns that piece of property, and they can put in their contract, you put your garbage out on such and such a date. If you don't, consequences will happen. This is about all I have to say tonight. We have been on kind of inactive during the last couple of months, the holidays, and I've been down to Honduras, and Clyde's been over to Europe and so on and so forth, but me and Stacy can come back with some hopefully good ideas. But again, thank you for what you're doing. And we just hope that this trend continues. Thank you.
Thank you. Bobby Weekly at a downtown park.
How you doing this evening?
We're doing fine. You?
All right. I have a little proposal as far as the Parks and Recreation Department. I know that was on kind of the agenda. Saw in the Starkville paper today, and I've driven by the intersection of Lampkin and Jackson Street a number of times, and have noticed the vacant lot next to the Boardtown Trading Post. And I've noticed since I've lived here almost 3 years now that there's not any kind of a downtown spot for any of the downtown workers, municipal workers also, to, sit and have lunch outside in a pleasant atmosphere. And I was thinking that maybe 3 or 4 or 5 picnic tables and some small shade trees and maybe a small shelter for when the weather really turns bad would be a good addition to the town of Starkville. A key intersection there, and would be kind of in the spirit of like urban renewal, actually, since that lot is vacant. I don't know who owns it, or if you could use eminent domain or whatever. Whoever the owner of Boardtown Trading Post is currently the owner of that property, and I just think that would be a pretty neat little idea there, especially in the summer sun. A few shade trees and, place for people to have lunch. It'd be a good addition to the downtown and the town of Starkville.
Any questions?
It's a good idea.
I think it's an excellent idea, yes. Have you had an opportunity to talk to the Downtown Business Association and any of those groups about it as well?
Not yet. Ms. Hendricks at the bank across the street, Regions Bank, Brian Jones there at Regions Bank. I would like to approach them as far as like corporate sponsorship. I work for Domino's Pizza here. We could feed whoever, did the actual work there on that small piece. Lowe's to donate some shade trees.
Andy Gaston at East Mississippi owns the property, so you can go talk to him and save having to find out who it is.
Okay, great.
Good luck.
Andy Gaston. Okay. All right.
Mr. Weekly,
Yes.
have you spoken to any of the park commissioners regarding this? Because this would come under park.
No, I haven't. I know that on the agenda tonight also was something about the Parks Commission and funding for it.
No, that was in the paper. It was not on the agenda here.
Oh, I'm sorry. Who would it be that I would need to talk to?
Mr. Moreland?
Dan Moreland is the.
He's sitting right back here.
He's
There's
back
your
there.
park commissioner right there.
A majority of them are here
All
tonight.
right, that's right.
Oh, great.
So,
Okay. As long as people know about that and maybe get some wheels turning and
Well,
some
just to,
wheels up.
I remember from the Whitfield Park, the city actually donated the land to the park system, so it may be an issue that we all need to sit down and talk about and come up with a solution. So we appreciate the idea and keep pushing us on it.
And he may be amenative to having something that would not be on a permanence there or whatever. Go talk to him.
Okay.
Be creative.
All right. Thank you.
And is a nice guy.
Okay.
The passage of time. We have shared your joy at the birth of your children, and proudly we have watched them grow. We've taken care of your health care needs during the good times and the not so good. Your parents and grandparents have depended upon us. Together we have shared the struggles and the wonders of life. At Oktibbeha County Hospital, we are celebrating 30 years of being your lifelong choice in health care.
Mr. Faber has looked at it and has gone over it and is comfortable with it. The Judge Ishii has it in his hand, and I've not heard back from him yet, but I was hoping that he would give me some input as well. And I will bring it back at some future time, but I wanted y'all to have it so that you could kind of assess what would be entailed in passing the ordinance and then making it effective, which you have an administrative hearing officer who would need to be appointed by the board. Board is going to end up being the final adjudicating body on this, assuming people want to go beyond the administrative hearing officer. So I don't think it's going to be a panacea for all the code enforcement issues, but I certainly think it might forestall some of them. It just remains to be seen. I don't know if, I've tried to do some research to try to find out if there's someone else in Mississippi who does it. There are some versions, but not to the extent that we're proposing here. It would include false alarms, dog issues, obviously, trash violations, and Mr. Griffith has proposed some other code issues to be looked at. So just wanted you to have it in front of you so that you could study it and give me some feedback at some point in time now or otherwise, and make sure that y'all were on board with the concept of probably hiring somebody, maybe part-time, to do this. It could be a staff person, but you have the option of doing an attorney, a local attorney, for a couple of hours. Obviously, we'd be outside of the court time frame. We need to do it on we use this room, but do it outside of board time, do it outside of court time, so that would be limited. I don't know if we need to do it once a week, once a month, every other week. It just, depending on how many cases that we had come before us, just to how much activity we would have to see generated. So it's sort of a work in progress, and we probably won't know until we get it going. But at least to begin with, I wanted y'all to have a look at what we were bringing forward, and you can give me feedback. If you have any thoughts on it now, I'll be delighted to jot them down and work on it from that angle, from a different angle. Or if you want to tell me no, you don't want to do it, you can do that too.
Well, you went through the Attorney General's process to say that what we were going to do with this was okay. Am I not correct about that?
Yes, we have gotten that.
So we've got all that on board. You got Clyde and Richard back here that said tonight, get going with it. Am I not right about that?
I understand that. However, I answer to the board rather than Clyde and Richard. All due respect.
And of course, the ultimate purpose is to relieve municipal court from a variety of issues with which they now deal.
Yes.
And to bring more speed to the process of resolving code enforcement.
And actually reduce costs, to be quite honest, because the false alarm can certainly be reduced to a certain extent, because a lot of those costs that are court-related don't have to come from the actual adjudication from an administrative hearing officer. So there's some option there that would be beneficial to those who find themselves with the false alarm issues, which I think is the major thing that's been causing some of the issues with the court. And that the judge said, how about we do an administrative hearing officer? And that was the first I'd heard of it. So then I began researching it, and I think he's on board with it, but he just hadn't had a chance to go through the ordinance in its entirety yet.
Between now and the next meeting, might I suggest that you make sure you talk to Judge Ishii to ascertain his concurrence with everything, and then reschedule it for us to take another look at.
Okay. So the board, as a consensus, to go forward with the concept of possibly having to hire someone to
I guess my
fulfill
thought process on that is, the ordinance part, the idea part is the easy part.
Right.
It's the details that
Implementation.
I'd like to see more fleshed out, and I'll be happy to participate in that process. But to give that answer, I need to have a better sense cost-wise, in addition to the
I don't know that we're going to know, to be quite honest. I think you'd have to, I can certainly research a local attorney if the city wants to, if the board wants to do that. We can look at what staff we have available to do that sort of thing, but I think, based on the nature of it, you're going to probably be better served by having perhaps a local attorney be willing to do a couple hours. And if you'd like me to proceed to see what kind of dollar we're talking about, a couple hours a week, 4 hours a month, something along those lines, I think that's the way you'll end up fleshing it out, is to do that. But I don't think that'll be included in the ordinance.
Excuse me, shouldn't we also have an understanding of, in 2006 and 2007, we had 200 of these type cases, and we should be able to get an assessment from the court on their current process of how much time that takes, and therefore we can estimate then that we think this is a 1 day a week as an example, and just to have, I just want to have more details around how this will actually work.
Okay.
Because that's where the hard part, the devil here will be in the details.
Yes.
But as a concept, I'm certainly very supportive.
Okay.
And of course, no objection to a little more research.
Okay. All right, well, the code enforcement cases y'all have looked at, but it's the false alarm cases that the court has specifically looked at, and I'll see what they've done with it.
Of course, with 2 hours, I think you're dreaming.
I was being, yes, I was just, kind of pulling something 2 hours a week, 4 4 hours a week, I don't know, every other week, who knows? But, okay, so, proceed.
Do you think this will be a full-time position?
No, I don't think it'll be a full-time position. I would hope it would not be a full-time position. I think it would be a part-time position, for sure.
Couple of hours.
We have more than one dreamer.
Well, maybe a couple hours a week, half a day a week. I mean, I really, truly do not know. But, we have false alarm ordinances, I think, that are the main thing that have been a concern of the court and of the judge. Obviously, the code enforcement stuff is the stuff that y'all have been looking at. So, we'll cut on that.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Wolf. We'll take a break, 5 minutes this time.
The passage of time. We have shared your joy at the birth of your children, and proudly we have watched them grow. We've taken care of your healthcare needs during the good times and the not so good. Your parents and grandparents have depended upon us. Together we have shared the struggles and the wonders of life. At Oktibbeha County Hospital, we are celebrating 30 years of being your lifelong choice in healthcare.
Bill, we're ready for you.
Mayor and Board.
I believe you are A and B of the agenda.
A and B, yes, sir. I have put in your packet a tentative program of expenditure for streets and drainage for this coming year. As you can quickly see, the expenditures that we have listed far exceed the amount of money I understand we have budgeted. So I would like for you to look at these the ones I have in number one on the street program, and possibly get back with me at the next board meeting. We probably won't have a lot of weather between now and then to do this anyway. I have talked to the contractor that we had last year, and he's willing to extend his contract through this paving season at the same unit prices if you want to go that route. Some of these streets, like Airport Road, Jackson Street, Industrial Park Road, they need overlaying and striping, but at the minimum, some of them need just striping. They can go a little longer, but we've got to stripe them because at certain times of the night or rainy period, you can't tell where the stripes are. They're just gone. Airport Road and probably Industrial Park Road. Now, Industrial Park Road needs some patching on the west or the southbound lane. It's rutted up pretty bad on that side. I don't know why the south of that lane rather than both lanes, but it does. Reed Road needs some patching and some leveling. Reed Road, pardon?
It's in horrible shape.
Yes, sir. Reed Road, I don't know if you go out there, but it's a new tie-in from north of town to Highway 25 bypass. And it's in a shape where the shoulder, it's sloughing off, and if you're not careful, you'll either over pull and be over the center line, and it's usually on a hill, or you can get pulled over in the ditch on the travel side. So it's got a big rut, and it's actually hard to maneuver your car through that thing without getting over the center line or trying to get it stay off on the shoulder. But we need to do some patching to that. So I wish you would carefully look at this, and let's hold it to. If you have any you want to add, let's talk about those between now and the next board meeting, and hopefully we can get a consensus at the next board meeting if you would. The drainage, I only listed 2 on the drainage program, and both of these were first priorities last year. One of them is one of the bridges out on Old West Point Road that the bottom is washed out underneath the walls of behind the piling. And one of the end walls is actually, we've lost the piling and need to replace that. And the other project is the project we talked about on Tabor Street, whereas the ditch is sloughing off and is taking the fence out of a house, and it's about half the backyard, I think, has been damaged by this ditch. That's over on the end of Tabor Street, which is the dead end off of North Montgomery Street. So I think we need to do those 2 projects as a minimum on drainage. The sidewalks that we talked about, we presented a while back a priority list or a schedule, I guess, for want of a better word, for the handicap accessible sidewalks. That's also included. I'd like to continue on for 08 and 07 and 08. We completed, except for one intersection down here of the Lampkin Street one from the last year. I'd like to just continue on working those out as we schedule them, if that's your wish. And I think it would include all of Lampkin and I think Jackson Street, the start part of Jackson Street. Anybody have any questions or comments? And none of this has got anything to do with the projects that we already got going. We still got some streets that need to be paved, some projects that were in the last years that you guys still got money on ongoing projects. So this is over and above that.
And some drain.
And drain.
Mr. Webb, I'm seeking out borrow something from some of my colleagues.
Okay.
We do have $370,000 allocated in this fiscal budget for capital projects, and because the overall priorities do exceed that amount, if it makes sense, we could have the infrastructure committee meet over the next 2 weeks and present some recommendations to the full board with Bill's agreement to come up with a list that would equal that amount. And we'll be able to get moving, get started as the weather improves.
Go to your next item, if you would.
Okay, the next item was,
Forward on it.
this is going to actually be harder than the last one. The report tentative timeline on the Lynn Lane and Safe Routes to School project. Right now, all I can basically say to you is it's bogged down in MDOT and Jackson. This project, both of these projects, as you know, is budget or funded by federal dollars through MDOT. And we sent down the contract for the first one that we let out for the engineering services for the Lynn Lane project in the middle, I think, the latter part of December. Called down there a week from today to get an update on it, and they didn't know where it was. They didn't have it. They were changing contract review. Somewhere between where I sent it to the normal guy I usually send it to, who used to approve the contracts, and him sending it on to this consulting group, it got lost. We emailed the consulting group a copy, called down today to see the status of it. He was sick at home with the flu. The lady that his assistant couldn't find a record of it. So we really don't know what the status of that project is. We are waiting on the second project, the Safe Routes to School. The engineer that we selected has gotten this week, I think, yesterday, the documentation from the MDOT on to exactly what kind of contracts he needs to do for the Safe Routes to School, and I should have that and be ready to present it to you at the next board meeting. The engineer on the Lynn Lane project said he could give us a timeline, but it would only be in number of days rather than dates, because we don't know when we're going to get approval, and we're kind of leery about starting any engineering work without that contract being approved and signed, because the state, the federal people especially, are now tightening up on people getting their engineers not by the approved method or starting them previously to awarding a contract to them, and we want to be real leery of that so that we don't mess up and get our hands slapped and have to start over. But at the next board meeting, I should have an answer on at least the Lynn Lane project as far as the contract and a timeline for that project to get started, and where we can have meetings with the people involved in both the Starkville in Motion and the community, so that we can give that information to the engineer and he can start his design work. Any questions?
Thank you, Bill.
Okay, thank you.
Lynn, would you kind of shepherd this consideration of approval of the interlocal agreement with Alderman Hall County Humane Society issue? Rodney's not here. You think we need to just take it?
You have what provided by Mr. Favor.
that is his work. He got with the county and apparently this is the, and I did not discuss it with him, but this would be the, result of his getting with the county and the interlocal agreement that was put together. But I did not talk to him about it, but his call and told me he wasn't going to be here. We discussed a couple other things, but not that, and I'm sorry, other than that, I can't provide you, any more information.
Mr. Mayor and Board, I've had a couple of conversations with the city attorney about this. He has reviewed the document, approved it, worked with the county on that. It's a very, very simple, straightforward interlocal agreement. So I would move that the city approve this interlocal agreement between the City of Starkville and Octavia County relative to the animal shelter, and that the agreement be forwarded to the Attorney General's office with, of course, concurrence of the county for approval.
Do you have a second?
Second.
All those in favor of the motion say aye. Do you want a question?
Just perhaps consider a friendly amendment, or perhaps the board would prefer to take it as a separate item, but I agree with the contract in principle. The Humane Society is getting animals from the county that there's no way to be compensated for. So it does reflect that reality, but would like to ask that the Humane Society keep accurate records of the intake of these animals. We contribute $106,000 a year to the maintenance of the animal shelter. The county's providing $5,000. That may be too much, but I suspect that it'll be too little as we go forward. And if we have those records, we'll be able to go back and work with the county. So I don't know if you'd consider that an amendment to that, just to ask them for that
Really
information.
does not need to be an amendment to the approval of the interlocal agreement, but certainly well taken in terms of a subsequent motion to ask them to track and provide that information, certainly.
Let's vote on this first one. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Make your motion now.
Move that we request and require that the Octavia County Humane Society animal shelter, present us with an annual report that would include records of the intake of animals to their facility, broken out by county and city animals.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Have a motion with a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Thank you, Marquita, on the acceptance of the bid of the software, I believe.
Good evening, Mayor and Board. This is the lease purchase proposal for the police and court software, and they came in yesterday, and I've been working on them the majority part of the day. What I'm asking the board is that they accept the proposal that's most favorable to the city and authorize the mayor to execute the lease agreement. But I will have to speak with some of the vendors to clarify their proposal.
If you need clarification on the proposal, then would it be appropriate for us to?
Well, because of the timeliness of it, we wouldn't be able to come back to the board before the police and court receive it, and this needs to be paid. But what I'm trying to do is, this one vendor is bid it monthly, and when I called them to clarify to see what their annual percentages were, I didn't get a response. And then another bid annually that may be comparable. And I just wanted to make sure we get what's best for the city.
So basically, you're wanting us to approve something that we haven't actually heard the final figures.
Well, yes, that we'll determine after we speak with them tomorrow and get concrete interest rates on.
It means how long we don't approve this tonight, then we have to wait until the 19th to approve it. Is the answer is yes, right?
Yes.
And then again, it would be, it's very, it would be detrimental to the operation of the court and police if we don't do it tonight.
That's correct. And that's why I was asking if you would approve the bid that's most favorable to the city.
Of course, the mayor.
And then we make that determination.
Of course, the mayor could call a special call meeting for after you found
Well, that's
and
true.
clarified.
Yeah,
between
it
now
won't
and
take
then.
us 10 minutes.
Oh, okay.
I would personally feel more comfortable doing that as well.
Okay, all right.
As everyone should.
Thank you, Marquita.
All right, thank you.
Next item is consideration of filling an appointment of an alderman to fill the vacant position. On the Municipal Complex Committee, the Trash Committee. Do I hear a suggestion? Or should we let Mr. Lincoln be his first appointment?
Are we discussing the Justice Complex, or are we discussing the trash?
Trash.
Mr. Mayor, if I may be recognized.
Yes,
These two vacancies were previously filled by the...
Oh, the Justice Complex and the other.
Yes, sir.
Matt, you're right.
Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor, these two vacant positions were previously filled by the former gentleman from Ward 2, and certainly I have no opposition to the current gentleman from Ward 2 filling both. And I won't make a motion. I'll just see what other comments, if any, come around the table. But I'm sure any support to be on the committee, but that was just a suggestion.
Go ahead and make the motion, Roy. Let's move on.
Mr. Mayor, I move that the newly appointed gentleman from Ward 2, Mr. Rodney Lincoln, be appointed to serve on the vacant position on the Municipal Complex Committee and on the Recycling, Rubbish, and Trash Committee.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Would you like to say something, Rodney? You got kind of railroaded into this.
But I'll take one of them.
I don't think either one meets that many times, so it's not like it's gonna be. And we have a second that you be appointed to both of these things right here. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Don't say anything, Rodney.
Congratulations.
Congratulations to you.
We certainly will serve trash.
The other items of consent, it brings us down to Building Codes Planning Department. Go ahead.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The first item this evening is a follow-up to code enforcement case number 07-220 for property owned by Mr. Curtis Bush Jr. located at 528 Vine Street in Ward number 4. The property owner last appeared before the board on January 15th and was given until today to bring the subject property into compliance. In order to do this, he was required to secure the rear door of the structure and repair or rebuild the front porch. As you can see by the photos provided, the property owner has accomplished both of these items and removed all trash from the site. Staff recommends that the board find that the property is now in compliance and that it be designated with repeat violation status due to the amount of time required to be brought into compliance. Staff also recommends that a daily fine of $100 per day should be instituted if the property is found to be in violation in the future based on the fact that the board established this amount for the violation on January 15th. The code inspector has been in contact with the property owner, and he is aware of the recommendations presented to you this evening. And Mr. Bush is here this evening. I spoke with him during the break as well.
Mr. Mayor, I say very brief.
Perkins.
Mr. Bush, let me just say, and I'm very excited to see you in full compliance because the board has been very, very, very patient with you. And I'm going if there's non-compliance, whatever the order of the board is going to be implemented. But I'm glad to see that, that you're in compliance because if it, it would have been a tough position to look at this otherwise if it had not been in compliance. But I just want to say that to you personally. I'm glad to see you're in full compliance because we've started this case numerous times and personally, I don't like to see these cases come just so many the same thing, but I'm glad to see that, and we just want to congratulate you for that.
Mr. Bush, thank you. I'd like to move that code enforcement case 07-220 be retired to the file due to being in compliance, that any future violations on said property be subject to a fine of $100 per day if not in compliance, and that the property in question be classified as, I guess, a repeat offender, proper term for that, if there is future problems. That's my motion.
Do we have a second of that motion?
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Thank you. Go to your next item.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, the next item is a presentation of a proposed sidewalk cafe policy. City staff has been approached by representatives of a restaurant on Main Street seeking to establish an outside dining area on the public sidewalk. The only regulation currently in effect is Section 98-2 of the city's Code of Ordinances, which authorizes the mayor and Board of Aldermen to issue annual permits for the utilization of public sidewalks which obstructs the free and unimpeded use of the sidewalks. Rather than wait until this or any other applications are submitted, city staff began drafting the proposed sidewalk cafe policy in your packets this evening. To give the mayor and board of aldermen a brief overview, the policy calls for submittal of an application to the city's development review staff, which will review the application and then make recommendations directly to the mayor and board of aldermen. The policy includes general requirements such as maintaining at least a 5-foot wide pathway of clear and unobstructed walkway, which is based on the minimum sidewalk requirement of 5 feet. Other requirements include minimum clearance from fire hydrants, placement of umbrellas, provision of $1 million in liability insurance, and execution of a hold harmless agreement in favor of the city of Starkville. The policy also includes conditions for revocation of the sidewalk cafe permit application and renewal fees, as well as an application form. After individual discussions with the aldermen, most of you have indicated that you would prefer 6 feet of sidewalk clearance instead of 5 feet, so that if tables and chairs encroach into the pathway, a minimum pathway would still be maintained at all times. There has been some concerns regarding the serving of alcoholic beverages and smoking in the sidewalk cafe area, so let me explain a couple of things for the board and also for the audience. The state alcoholic beverage control regulations require submittal of a floor plan for the review and approval of outside areas and they're required to be enclosed with a railing or other fence-type material. However, at the same time, the city must maintain a 5 or, if y'all decide, a 6-foot wide, clear, and unobstructed pathway for pedestrian use of the sidewalk. It would be extremely difficult to be able to meet both of these criteria due to the limited width of the public sidewalk along Main Street or any other areas around the city. Examples would include Harvey's, which has a fenced area outdoors on a private sidewalk area, and Ben 612 in the Cotton District, which has an enclosed area immediately adjacent to but not on the public sidewalk. As far as the smoking ordinance goes, the ordinance requires that smoking be kept at a reasonable distance from the doorway or entry area and does not specify a specific number of foot radius distance separation. Because of this, the development review staff will need to review an applicant's proposed layout and make recommendations to the mayor and board of aldermen, which may include, for instance, that tables closest to the door be kept smoke-free, while tables closer to the street would be allowed to be designated for smoking. I wanted to present the policy to the mayor and the board of aldermen this evening, and I'm asking to bring the sidewalk cafe policy back on the 19th for adoption with any revisions or recommendations that y'all make this evening. And I'm asking any questions that y'all may have.
Matt? From over here, I do have a question. Just want to check the beer ordinance as it stands, because beer specifically is prohibited from being served on a public sidewalk.
Yes, sir.
That's correct.
That's correct.
Anybody to misunderstand that beer could be served.
Yes, sir, and I should have addressed that, but the alcoholic beverage control regulations are separate and distinct.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Some people confuse that with wine and liquor.
Yes, sir.
Being separate, but beer is still prohibited.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, Chief.
Do you have a question?
Yeah, Mr. Griffin, I guess I'd like to be able to see in a picture form what this could look like. I mean, I understand the ordinance, but, you know, I'm struggling to see how on the north side of the downtown sidewalks where a sidewalk cafe could actually fit, because it's relatively narrow with the railing and with the businesses and maintaining that. But I'm not certain of that, so I'd like to get a sense of, you know, some proposed how this would look, how it would actually fit, and then the same thought process on the south side. I can understand the ordinance, but knowing that really the only place in the city that this could apply is downtown, I think we should have very clear understanding of what it could look like before we would vote on the ordinance that would handle it.
And it would be tricky because there are planters, there are railings, there's steps, and those are not uniform along both sides of the street. So each one, and that's part of the reason why to have an individual review, because they are going to be different. Each one is going to have some characteristics that aren't going to be on the next one, and also like fire hydrant locations. As it is right now, the adjacent to a planter, which is adjacent to the parking area on the street. And by estimation, there's about 6 or 7 feet between the edge of the table and the front of their building. Generally speaking, all the properties that are on Main Street, all of the buildings are built to the property line, which is the edge of the public right-of-way. There's very, very minor exceptions where there may be a setback for an entryway or a doorway or a display area. So if you want some type of a display or a graphic, it's going to be a little hard to kind of do a one-size-fits-all.
I'll take just a couple sizes.
Okay.
Just so I can understand what it could look like as we consider it.
Do something on the north side and something on the south side, and I would do a worst-case scenario on the north side and the same thing on the south side.
Right. And then I understand that current regulations will prohibit the sale of beer on the sidewalk. Is there anything prohibiting the city ordinance to be stronger than the ABC ordinance, where we could, if we consider this, also prohibit the sale of liquor and wine?
Well, that would be obviously be a separate ordinance, and the city attorney would, need to review that, but that's certainly separate and distinct.
On that point, wouldn't you think it would be fair to say that since ABC requires that they have a fenced area for outdoor consumption shown on their plan that they submit to ABC, and then right here, point B in section 2, you say the sidewalk cafe shall consist of no permanent improvement. That prohibits them from providing for that fenced-in area, which would then therefore prohibit them from selling alcoholic or hard liquor on the street.
That was, Mr. Webb and I discussed that, and the permanent improvement, and I will clarify that, the permanent improvement was meant to entail the tables and chairs, as the benches that everyone's aware of, that the benches that are there and they're bolted down permanently. The permanent improvement was meant to be tables and chairs, not a railing, because the railing or a fence is going to be a requirement of the state, so I will clarify that.
Mr. Mayor, just briefly.
Yes.
Mr. Griffith, I just still got some question marks or reservations as to whether this ordinance has the potential to allow the consumption of alcoholic beverages and smoking on city streets. That's a question that's going to stay with me unless those concerns are satisfied. And of course, in your intentions, I'm sure, are good and well, but those are some things that concerns me. And I understand with the ABC regulations, but I just wanted to share that with you. Those are some things that concerns me as to the potential of allowing that.
Yes, sir. And I think several of the other aldermen, I believe every alderman I spoke with had similar concerns.
Ben, since our conversation about this, has the city attorney had a chance to review this? Have you had a chance to talk to him?
I've tried to contact him, and I guess he's been out of pocket. I've not been able to talk with him about that. I do know that the language that I included about the indemnity and hold harmless liability insurance, that's pretty much standard language that we've used on other items where that's been required. So I actually, he has actually provided a standard text that we use on other items, so I use that. So if he wanted to go any further, which he may because of the liability factor, at least I have the baseline for what he requires on other similar projects.
Given the comments, questions, and so forth, I would move that we take this under advisement for further study, further research, and consider it at a later meeting.
All righty, sir.
That's in the form of a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Personnel, we took number 2 off of consent.
I don't need an explanation. You can go ahead and vote. I just want to be recorded.
Okay, there's a request authorization to hire Ed Slaughter as a temporary.
Did you skip the office of the city clerk?
Did I? I'm trying to get this meeting over with in a hurry.
Mayor and board move approval of the claims docket through February 1st, 2008.
Second.
We have a motion that we accept. All those opposed, nay.
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 Thank you, Marquita.
Thank you.
Now we'll get out of personnel. There's a request, and he said he's just gonna vote against that, to hire Ed Slaughter.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Pardon me?
I said so moved.
Do we have a second?
question. Second.
All right, are there questions?
Give us in summary fashion a justification for this proposed hire.
I'll be happy to. We're going the inventory, perpetual inventory control portion of our public works management software. And it's going to require some, a concentrated period of time with an additional resource. The two main functions are going to be, one, organizing the storeroom into bins and labeling all the bins with all the parts, place for everything in its place. And then number two, as we go through and do cycle counts and compare the inventory on the system to what's actually out there, there's going to be some discrepancies, and it's going to take somebody who can have the time to go out there and investigate these discrepancies, train the personnel, and do those things. So when it says 8 weeks, it probably is misleading, like it's going to be 8 consecutive weeks. You might want to just say 320 hours. It might take a week to get the storeroom set up, and then go a month and do a cycle count, and then come back in and troubleshoot it and find out where the problems are, and just basically put those things to bed.
Does that answer your question?
Does.
We have a motion with a second. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay.
Nay.
Thank you. Ed, Doug, rather, we've got two other items on public service that we took off the consent item. That's item 1 and 2. It's like the best bid for,
Can you give me an idea what kind of explanation you need?
The agenda says acceptance of the best bid. Would like some explanation as to why
it's the best
the
bid.
bidder is the best bid.
Oh, okay.
Since the law requires that we justify in words and figures in the minutes an acceptance of a bid other than the low bid.
Right. Well, I think this was the low bid, I believe. Was it not?
That's what I want to be sure,
Oh, okay.
because the agenda said best bid.
Oh, okay.
The item is the lowest. You supplied $26,027.50.
Yeah, and item 1, the low bidder there was Empire, and they, all this product is generic. It's a generic product in the marketplace, and it meets specs, so it's in the best interest of the city to take the lowest bid.
Okay, so low bid is what we're talking about.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then I would move acceptance of the low bid of Empire Pipe and Supply for the furnishing of sewer pipe to the city. Water pipe, in this case, to the city.
Second.
Motion is second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those,
And it's the same situation with item 2, Mr. McLaurin. The best bid, the bid that's in the best interest of the city is the lowest bid from U Supply.
Okay, again, I would move acceptance of the low bid of Hughes Supply for the furnishing of certain valves and fittings to.
all those opposed, nay. Passes. All right, the last item was taken off, I think is the, city water tower putting an antenna up for the school system.
I was approached by the assistant superintendent of the schools last week, about the time the board packets were going out. And the Starkville School District has received a grant to put two-way radios in all their school buses this coming year. And the supplier of the equipment has advised them that the best coverage for all their school buses is to mount an antenna up on the top of a water tank or near the top of a water tank. What I asked tonight, if you want to, of course, we can, come back later if you'd like, but if you do grant this approval, it would be contingent on a couple of things. Number one, our leasing agent for antenna space on the tanks is Utility Service Communications, and I would want to send the specs to them and let them look at it and just make sure that it wouldn't interfere with any of the cell phone antennas we have up there. And then number two, I would want to make sure that it's not taking up one of the posts that we have on top of the tanks where cell phone antennas can be mounted, because that's a source of revenue for us, whenever we, can lease that space to a cell phone company. So if you want to go ahead and act on it tonight, we can do it contingent on those two approvals, or if you'd like, I can come back at another meeting and investigate these things and get back to you.
Doug, given the importance of this, especially to our school system, as well as the fact that we're getting this through a grant,
Right.
I would be glad to move approval of the in-kind donation of antenna space contingent upon approval by the Public Utilities Commission and our leasing agent.
Yeah, it would actually be Utility Service Communications, which is our leasing agent for the towers, for the space on them.
I would second that, and you will come back if there are problems
Yes, sir,
involved
I
in
will.
this.
We have a motion and second.
Just to clarify, the approval of Mr. Devlin as well as the leasing agent.
Yeah, I said
Okay.
contingent upon both.
Everyone's heard the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Brings us down to executive session. So here we move in.